What's up, YouTube? Today I'll be sharing with you 6 tips you need to change your picture from here to here. I'm with the beautiful Emefa, who will be my model for today. So the first tip is that you have to manually focus for the subject you are shooting. For instance, I have Emefa in frame here, and the camera is doing its best by trying to look for the subject and focus on the subject. But for me to get a sharp and a nice image, I have to actually let the phone know that this is the person or this is the subject on which I am focusing. And you do that by actually clicking on the subject. By so doing, now you see that it becomes sharper, and the camera has now found that it is Emefa that I'm focusing on. Now, how this works is that cameras work with three parameters. That is the shutter speed, the aperture, and the ISO. And when you're using a camera as in a DSLR, you have to sometimes do the calculations yourself. But by manually exposing for the subject, the camera actually considers the motion of the subject, that is Emefa in this case, and what's the suitable shutter speed, aperture, and ISO to use to get a great image out of Emefa. So all I have to do as the one taking the picture with my phone is that I click on the face of Emefa and I take the picture. So you'll be seeing the picture on your screen to see the output of the camera, and also be putting a picture of when the camera itself tries to expose for and to find its own subject to see the difference between both pictures. So this actually when the camera tries to expose for itself, and when I manually expose for my subject. All right. So the second tip is that you have to hold the phone still. And by holding the phone still, you have to keep your two hands by your body steady whilst you focus on your subject, and then you take your pictures. This helps the phone to keep the focus on the subject that you have already focused on. If you have been enjoying what you have been seeing so far, the tips we've been giving you so far about iPhone photography, please don't forget to, at this point, take a second to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you can have more videos of this nature. I was saying you have to hold the phone still like this, perpendicular to the ground. You know what perpendicular means, which means that straight, which can form an angle of 90 degrees with the ground if you should extend the phone to the ground. And then we take the pictures of your subject. So I'm going to upload a picture of a shaking hand here and a picture when the phone is held steadily. Another option is that you can use tripods, because tripods, when you fist on the tripod fist on the ground, okay, will keep the phone stable, and you can take as many shots as you want, or you use a selfie stick to make it easier. And you know how to mount a phone on a selfie stick. I have a NASCO selfie stick which I'm using for this tutorial, and basically I'm going to mount it so I can hold it with one hand and then take the picture of my subject. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 3, you have to learn how to lock focus on your subject. And for iPhone users, it's very simple. You only lock focus by pressing on your subject for about 5 seconds, and then you see AE/AF lock, which means that the focus is locked on my subject. By doing this, I can either move forward and still keep my subject in focus, or move backward to take a full body shot with my subject still in focus. So you have to lock focus by just pressing on the subject, as an earlier one said. That's this for tip number 3. Number 4, for those of you who are tired of taking boring slow motions with everything being in one place, you will learn to rotate your phone once the video starts shooting. This will give it a cool effect that I'm going to show you after I'm done with this. Watch and learn. So Emefa, kindly walk towards me. Tip number 5, for those of you who use iPhone X and above, in your portrait mode, you'll realize that there's something written, there's an F written on top at the right corner of your phone. That F actually means aperture. What aperture is actually is kind of like the eye of the camera. So you can set the aperture to give you the kind of image you want. Let me show you. For now, my aperture is around 4.5. So I'm going to take a picture at 4.5. Then I'm going to reduce it and take other 2 pictures to show you what it does. So this is a picture at 4.5 of MFR. Now, I'm going to reduce my aperture to 2.8. Then you see the difference. I'm going to take a picture now. This is 2.5 actually. I'm going to take a picture and see the difference. And then I'm going to take it to all the way to 1.4, which is the lowest for the iPhone XS Max that I'm using. What aperture actually means is that it's like the eye of the camera. Okay, so when you have a higher number like 4.5 thereabout, it means that the eye will open, but it will be a little bit like small like this. So it will allow a little, just some small amount of light to enter. So when the aperture is at 4.5, with the same and the camera calculates your shutter speed and your ISO, the image will come out a little bit darker and you have more of the subject and the background in focus. Okay, but when you reduce it like to somewhere 2.8, 1.4, the eye of the camera is going to open wide to allow more light inside the camera and then give you a brighter image and a bokeh at the background. The bokeh is like the blurry effect that you have behind the cameras, behind the images that you get. So as I upload the image, you're actually going to see that at 1.4, MFR was more softer in the frame, and the background was more blurry. It was more blurry. Tip number 6, the use of the grid. Okay, as you can see on screen, on my iPhone screen, I have a grid there which I made appear by going to settings, tapping camera, then you see grid and you turn it on. Instead of always centering your images, putting MFR at this, instead of always putting MFR at the center of my image and not telling any story, I can put MFR in one of these grids or in 3 of them or at the side of the picture in order to create a certain mood or atmosphere around my picture. Okay, to tell, so that when someone sees the picture of MFR, the picture actually communicates something. For instance, MFR look upward that way. So if I center MFR this way, it is evident that MFR is looking at something. So it creates some suspense around MFR. What is she looking at? So the picture leaves you with a question. So instead of always putting your subject in the middle, decide to put your subject in such a frame or in a grid such a way that the picture will communicate something to someone, the person viewing it. So I'm going to leave about 3 pictures of MFR gridded in one of the grids or one of the frames to see how those images look like. Thank you for staying with us for the 6 tips for iPhone photography. We'll be adding more. You see, tips are just to guide us to get more creative. You can modify any of the tips to make it your own, make it suitable for yourself. You can even forget about them and just be creative. Get your pictures and your videos talking.